Welcome to Christ's Word, where everyday lives meet the light of God's Word. Here, we don't preach. We tell stories. Moments of doubt, turning points, quiet revelations, all woven with raw emotion and unshakable faith. You're not just listening to someone else's journey. You might just find your own reflection in it. And maybe, just maybe, by the end, you'll discover the answer you've been searching for. She stood there, her hands trembling, fingers digging into the edge of the table like if she let go, the entire world would fall apart. No one in the meeting room looked her in the eye. Not a single soul. The words from her boss, spoken calmly, without anger, still hit her like a slap across the face. "We just don't think you're a good cultural fit." The way he emphasized the word, cultural, it wasn't just a sentence. It was a sentence. No one mentioned that her report had been stolen. No one said a word about how she was the only one in the room ever called aggressive, though she'd never once raised her voice. No one acknowledged the meetings she wasn't invited to, even though she had done most of the work. And not one person, not one, could look into the eyes of a young brown-skinned woman and face what they'd done. Her name was Alina. And that day, her world cracked wide open. Not because she got fired, but because for the first time, she felt something she never thought she was capable of. Hatred. She had always thought of herself as kind. Raised in a Christian home. Sunday school, bedtime prayers, gratitude before meals. But after that day, she couldn't pray. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, that smug smile, the perfectly combed silver hair, the icy stare as he signed her termination papers without blinking. She hated him. She hated the way they looked at her, like a token. A checkbox. A diversity win. She hated the whispers behind her back, the fake smiles, the performative pats on the back. And slowly, she started to hate herself. For staying silent. For trying so hard to be agreeable. For believing that being excellent was enough. One night, as darkness wrapped around her small apartment, Alina sat with her phone in hand, fingers flying across the screen. She was writing a post, long, detailed, raw. She was going to name names. She was going to expose everything. She wanted them to burn. But then, her thumb hovered. A sudden stillness came over her. Like someone had quietly laid a hand on her shoulder. She almost ignored it. But the following week, she met him. A stranger. An odd man in a worn-out button-down and scuffed shoes. No pulpit. No title. No church building. But his eyes had a kind of quiet fire. They met at a coffee shop. She doesn't remember who spoke first. All she knows is, minutes later, she was sitting across from him, pouring out her story, like she'd been waiting to for months. He didn't interrupt. He didn't say, "Just forgive them," like others had, trying to skip over the pain. He listened. And when she was done, when she had nothing left to say, he closed his eyes. Bowed his head. And prayed. Softly. Gently. Like a whisper from another world. "God, let her see the depth of your unchanging love. Even when her world feels shattered. Show her that justice begins in the heart. Not in revenge." Alina didn't reply. But she didn't leave either. For the first time in weeks. She just sat there. No words. No tears. Just stillness. And in that stillness, something began to shift. Alina didn't change overnight. The anger didn't vanish just because someone prayed. It still sat heavy in her chest, like wet stones sinking her spirit a little deeper every morning. But something had cracked open. A window. A question. She kept returning to that coffee shop. Not because she needed more answers, but because, for once, she didn't have to pretend she was okay. The man's name was Elias. He didn't talk much about himself. He didn't give long sermons. But every time he looked at her, it felt like he saw something more than her wounds. He saw her strength. Even when she didn't. One afternoon, it rained hard. Alina sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug. The sky outside was dark, the kind of gray that soaks into your bones. She turned to Elias and said, almost in a whisper, "I hate them. I know I'm not supposed to. But I do." He didn't flinch. He didn't correct her. He just nodded slowly and asked, "Do you think Jesus doesn't understand hatred?" That question stopped her. Because in every painting, every stained glass window she grew up with, Jesus was always serene, glowing, untouchable. Elias continued. He knew betrayal. He knew mockery. He was spat on, stripped, nailed to a cross by people who saw him as less than human. And still, he said, "Father, forgive them." Alina looked away. "I'm not Jesus," she muttered. "No," Elias said gently, "but you are his." Those words sat with her longer than she expected. Later that night, she remembered something from her childhood, a Bible story she once loved. The Good Samaritan. But this time, it felt different. The Samaritan was the one hated by society. The outcast. The one no one expected to be good. And yet, he was the one who stopped. Who helped. Who healed. Not the priest. Not the religious elite. The outcast. Alina thought about that all night. She thought about what it meant to be the other. She thought about how easy it is to become the very thing you despise. To return hate with hate. Silence with silence. Violence with your own sharpened words. And for the first time, she felt afraid. Not of her enemies. But of the bitterness growing roots inside her. Because she knew, if she let it grow too long, it would change her. Twist her. By the next morning, she did something strange. Something she hadn't done in months. She opened her Bible. The pages felt stiff, unfamiliar. But her hands found their way, almost on their own, to a passage in Romans. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12 verse 21. She read it again. And again. Something about it burned. Not in a loud, fiery way. But like the soft, steady glow of a candle in a dark room. She didn't know what to do next. She didn't feel strong. She didn't feel holy. But she whispered one sentence, barely audible. God, help me not become what they are. And for that moment, it was enough. It wasn't some dramatic transformation. There were no angelic voices. No blinding lights. Just a quiet moment in a quiet room. A young woman sitting on the floor, Bible open in her lap, eyes red from the weight of her own silence. But something shifted. The next morning, Alina walked to the corner store, and for the first time in weeks, she noticed the faces around her. The old man holding the door open. The teenage girl behind the counter with chipped pink nails. The woman in the hoodie who didn't make eye contact. And in each face, she saw a flicker of something she hadn't looked for in a long time. Humanity. She started writing again. But not the post. She wrote letters. Letters she never planned to send. To her old manager. To the colleague who took credit for her work. To the woman who once said, "You're so articulate for someone like you." She poured everything into them, every wound, every betrayal, every word she wished she had screamed in that boardroom. But then, she added something she never expected. A prayer. God, help me release this. Even if they never say sorry. Even if they never understand. Set me free. She met with Elias again. This time, she brought the letters. He didn't read them. He didn't need to. He simply said. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing who you want to become. Alina stared at her coffee. But if I forgive, they get away with it. Right? Elias nodded slowly. Maybe. In this life. But forgiveness isn't weakness. It's warfare. It's choosing not to let evil have the final word. She sat with that. Not fighting back wasn't giving up, it was fighting differently. Fighting with love, in a world that only respects power. Fighting with mercy, when everything inside you screams for justice. One night, she lay awake, thinking about Jesus, really thinking about him. Not as a myth. Not as a symbol. But as a man. A brown-skinned carpenter. Poor. Mocked. Whipped. Crucified by a system that feared him because he loved too freely. And yet, on the cross, blood in his eyes, bones exposed, he didn't just ask God to forgive them. He did it while they were still hurting him. He didn't wait for an apology. He didn't wait for them to change. Alina whispered into the dark. God, teach me to love like that. Not because they deserve it. But because you loved me when I didn't. It was the first real prayer she'd said in weeks. And somehow, it didn't feel small. It felt like the beginning of something holy. The email came on a Thursday. Just a name in the subject line. A meeting invite. 9 a.m. Monday. Conference room B. No explanation. But Alina knew. She sat at her kitchen table, heart pounding like a drum in her throat. She hadn't heard from them in over 2 months. Not a word. Not a check-in. Not even a goodbye. Now, this. She stared at the screen, that one line of text burning hotter than anything else. Please be prepared to discuss your departure. Her chest tightened. The taste of metal filled her mouth. So this is it, she thought. All that praying. All that surrender. And still, it comes to this. She closed the laptop and pressed her fingers against her temples. God, why bring me this far just to watch me fall again? Sunday came with rain. She almost didn't go to church. She sat in her car outside the building, engine running, fingers trembling on the steering wheel. But something told her, go in anyway. She slipped into a back pew, head down, the way people do when they're too exhausted to pretend. The pastor's voice echoed through the room, speaking a verse she had heard 100 times before, but this time, it pierced. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Alina blinked. Slowly. Letting it sink in. Not blessed are the victorious. Not blessed are the well-liked. Not even blessed are the peaceful. But the persecuted. The rejected. The ones who chose love and still got torn down. When the service ended, Elias found her in the hallway. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. He placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered. You are not fighting them anymore. You're fighting for your soul. That night, Alina didn't sleep. She thought about her younger self, the version of her who would have walked into that Monday meeting with fire in her eyes, every insult rehearsed, every wound turned into a weapon. But that girl, she wasn't here anymore. Something in her had died. And something else was being born. A deeper kind of strength. Not loud. Not showy. But rooted. Unshakable. Monday came. Alina stood in front of the mirror, buttoning her blouse, her fingers trembling just slightly. She prayed aloud this time. God, if I lose this job today, let me keep my peace. Let them see you in me, even if they don't recognize it. And please, don't let my heart harden again. She walked into the building with her head high. But as soon as she stepped into the meeting room, her stomach dropped. He was there. Her former supervisor. The one who humiliated her in front of the entire department. The one who silenced her during team meetings. The one who let others take the credit and called her too sensitive when she spoke up. He smiled. Fake. Tight. Corporate kindness. Thanks for coming, Alina. She nodded, voice caught in her throat. He began to talk about performance, structure, policy changes, opportunities for growth. All of it wrapped in a kind of language that sounds like fairness but tastes like betrayal. Then he said it. We want to offer you your position back, with certain adjustments. We believe in second chances. A slow burn rose in her chest. Second chances, for whom? For him, after what he did? Or for her, if she agreed to be quiet again? Her lips parted. The words formed fast in her mind, sharp, perfect rebuttals, years of frustration rising like floodwater. But then, something else happened. A voice inside her. Not hers. Soft. Steady. This is not your battlefield. I am your defender. And in that moment, she knew what to do. She smiled. Gently. Fully. I forgive you. The room went still. Her supervisor blinked. Confused. Maybe even shaken. She stood. But I won't be returning. She picked up her bag. I'm choosing peace. And walked out. Her legs trembled as she reached the parking lot. But her soul. It felt like it could finally breathe. The air smelled different that day. Not cleaner. Not brighter. Just, different. Like the moment after a storm, when everything's still heavy but the wind finally starts to move again. Alina sat in her car, hands resting on the wheel, tears drying in streaks on her cheeks. She hadn't cried in a meeting. But now, out here, there was nothing stopping it. Not sadness. Not regret. Just release. She wasn't angry anymore. And that scared her more than anything. Because for so long, anger had been her armor. Her explanation. Her fire. It was the only thing that made the pain feel useful. But now, she was just left with the ashes. She whispered. God, what do I do with this emptiness? No thunder answered. No miracle wind shook the sky. Just a quiet knowing in her chest. Use it. The next few weeks blurred together, slow mornings, long walks, silent evenings. But in the stillness, something began to stir. She joined a local community center, not knowing why. Just, following the pull. They offered everything from ESL classes to food drives to Saturday youth workshops. Her first Saturday, she helped stack chairs. By the second Saturday, she was running the workshop. 12 teenagers, most of them first or second generation immigrants. Different shades of skin, different accents, same restless energy. Some joked. Some kept their heads down. Some eyed her suspiciously, waiting to see if she was for real. And Alina, she saw herself in all of them. She didn't come to preach. She just came to be. To listen. To ask questions. To hold space. But they kept showing up. Every week. One girl, Maya, opened up first. She shared about being called names on the bus. About teachers who assumed she cheated because she got straight A's. About how sometimes, she hated the way she looked in the mirror. Alina looked her in the eyes and said. Your skin is not your shame. It's your armor. Your beauty. Don't let this world convince you otherwise. That night, Maya sent her a voice message. Miss Alina. I told my mom what you said. She cried. Thank you. Alina stared at the message for a long time. Then she whispered. God, this. If this is what you're doing with my pain. I'm in. And she meant it. The following month, she was invited to speak at a local panel on racial equity. Just a small event, 20, maybe 30 people. Folding chairs, coffee in paper cups. Nothing fancy. But when she stepped up to the mic, hands shaking, heart pounding, she felt something she hadn't felt since before the office breakdown. Purpose. She didn't read a script. She told the truth. About what it felt like to be dismissed. To be labeled. To be tolerated, but never fully welcomed. And then, she told them about forgiveness. Not the clean, polite version. Not the churchy slogan wrapped in gold foil. But the real kind. The kind that costs something. The kind that leaves a scar. She told them about the meeting. The smile. The choice to walk away. Forgiveness, she said, isn't pretending it didn't happen. It's refusing to let it define who you become. Afterward, a man approached her. Mid-50s, white, former police officer. She tensed at first. But he took off his hat, looked her in the eye, and said, "I've been holding anger for 30 years. I want to do what you did. I just don't know how." She didn't give him a formula. She just said, "Start by asking God to break your pride. Then ask Him to rebuild your heart." They stood in silence. It was enough. Alina's name began to spread. She never planned it. She wasn't trying to become anything. But doors opened, schools, churches, podcasts. People were hungry not just for outrage, but for healing. And Alina? She was ready. But this time, not from ego. Not from bitterness. Not from the need to prove anything. She was moving from love. From obedience. From the deep, unshakable knowledge that she was no longer a victim of what happened to her, but a vessel for something bigger. She started a small online group, Reconcile and Rise. No big promotion. No advertising. Just a space for people to come with their stories, their pain, their prejudice, their fears, and wrestle with what it really means to forgive. One night, she posted a prayer. "God, let me see the depth of your unchanging love. Let me love the ones I don't understand. Let me bless the ones who've cursed me. Let me be a light where I was once a wound." The comments poured in. "I needed this tonight. This broke me. I haven't prayed in years. But this. I'm praying again." And just like that, her life, which had once felt shattered, was being woven into something sacred. Not easy. Not perfect. But holy. One morning, she stood in her kitchen, brewing tea, soft worship music playing from her speaker. She looked out the window, saw the city waking up. And she whispered, "Thank you for not letting me stay angry. Thank you for carrying me through. And thank you for using my hurt to heal someone else." She didn't need applause. She didn't need a title. She just needed to stay close to the one who had never let go of her hand, even when she had tried to let go of his. It was a Thursday. Ordinary on the surface, emails, errands, the usual hum of life. But something tugged at her that morning. A nudge in her chest she'd come to recognize as more than anxiety. It was the Holy Spirit. She had learned not to ignore it. So when the email landed in her inbox, from HR at her old company, she knew it wasn't a coincidence. "Alina, we're hosting a diversity and healing initiative. Your name came up. Would you consider sharing your story with our executive team?" She stared at the screen. Hands still. Heart pounding. Not anger this time. Not even fear. Just gravity. The weight of a moment that could not be avoided. She whispered, "God, are you sure? Do I really need to go back there?" And the whisper back was gentle, but unmistakable. "Not for them. For you." So she said yes. The day of the event, she wore white. Not for attention. For peace. White had never felt powerful before, not in boardrooms, not in protests, not in memories of hospital beds and courtroom benches. But today, she wasn't dressing for defense. She was dressing for freedom. She walked through those familiar glass doors, the same ones she once passed through in silence, clutching shame like a briefcase. Now, her steps were steady. Her breath, prayerful. God, go before me. Make me invisible if you must, as long as they see you. The room wasn't large. 12 people. Suits. Folded hands. Glances exchanged. And then, there he was. Greg. The man whose smile had once sliced through her dignity. The one who had leaned into the microphone in that meeting and delivered a betrayal dressed as business. She hadn't seen him since that day. He looked older. Smaller. Like he, too, had been walking through his own wilderness. She took her seat. Introductions. Nods. Nervous laughter. And then it was her turn. She didn't read from paper. She didn't list statistics. She told the truth. About coming in early and staying late. About the unspoken rules no one explained to her. About how professionalism was always defined by someone else's comfort. She spoke slowly. Not with venom. But with vision. I used to think forgiveness meant pretending I was okay. Now I know it means releasing someone from the debt they'll never be able to repay. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Silence settled like snow. Some looked down. Some blinked fast. Greg? He looked directly at her. And when it ended, he stood. Cleared his throat. And with more cracks than words, said. I've thought about that day 100 times. You didn't deserve what happened. And I was wrong. I'm sorry. The room didn't gasp. No one clapped. But in Alina's soul, something broke open. And something else, something ancient and golden, poured in. It wasn't approval. It wasn't vindication. It was the quiet, searing knowledge that God had used even this. That not one moment of pain had been wasted. And when she responded, her voice didn't shake. I forgive you. That was it. 3 words. But they reverberated through every hallway of her past. Not because he deserved them. But because she no longer needed him to deserve them. She walked out of that building lighter than she had entered it. Not because anything had been undone. But because God had redeemed it. Later that night, she sat in her apartment, soft light glowing, journal open beside a half-empty cup of tea. She wrote. Today, I made peace with the part of my story I used to hate. I didn't go back to fix it. I went back to finish it. God doesn't always erase what breaks us. But He does something even more holy. He transforms it into a testimony. She closed the journal. And whispered. Start your day thanking God. It was something she said every morning now. Not out of routine. But because her life had taught her the truth of it. When you begin with gratitude, bitterness has less room to grow. That weekend, she returned to the community center. Maya was waiting. They hugged, like family. Then Maya held up a sheet of paper, a college acceptance letter. She'd written her essay on the woman who taught her how to forgive. Alina's eyes blurred. You did this, Maya said. No, Alina whispered. We did this. And God gets the glory. There's something sacred about sitting in silence after a storm. That's what Alina felt one Sunday evening, curled up in the corner of her small living room, soft worship music playing low in the background, the Bible open on her lap. The chaos had passed. The confrontations, the tears, the prayers poured out on bathroom floors. All behind her now. But what remained was not just survival. It was wisdom. It was the quiet voice of God, no longer muffled by fear or rage, now clearer than ever. She ran her fingers across the verse she'd once underlined in desperation. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you. Matthew 5 verse 44. It had sounded like a command meant for saints. Impossibly high. Unreachable. But now, she knew it was not a demand. It was an invitation. To freedom. To healing. To becoming someone new. And so she turned toward the camera, toward you. There was no production crew. No studio lights. Just her, in a room filled with stories. One candle flickering in the background. And the kind of look in her eyes that only comes from walking through fire and making it out whole. Her voice was steady, soft, almost like prayer. I don't know who hurt you. I don't know what you've been carrying. The names they called you, the things they stole, the dignity they tried to erase. But I do know this. Jesus never asked you to forget. He asked you to follow. She paused. Let the silence breathe. And following him sometimes means walking straight through the valley of your bitterness. With your fists unclenched. Not because you approve of what they did. But because your soul deserves rest. She looked down, eyes glistening. Then back to the lens, her voice thick with memory. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's the boldest kind of strength. Because it says, you don't control me anymore. Not in my thoughts. Not in my future. I belong to Christ now. And he makes all things new. Her smile was soft. Not triumphant. Just true. I used to pray, God, change them. But over time, my prayer changed. God, change me. Let me see the depth of your unchanging love. And when I did, I saw that the people who broke me didn't win. Because they never got the final word. God did. A long silence. Then she leaned in, just slightly, like telling a secret to a close friend. If you're still angry, it's okay. If you're still healing, that's okay too. But don't camp in bitterness. Don't let your pain be the only story you carry. There's more to you than what they did. There's more to you than what you lost. There is grace waiting for you. She looked around the room. The candle. The Bible. The faint sound of her heartbeat in her ears. And if you're thinking, but I can't forgive them yet. I understand. Start small. Start here. Just tell God. I want to forgive. Teach me how. That's enough. He'll meet you right there. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And when the world screams, never forgive. Stay angry. Make them pay. You'll hear another voice. The still, small one. Saying, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. She closed her Bible slowly. And smiled, this time not just for you, but with you. Your healing matters. And it's possible. Even now. Then she reached out, not literally, but with warmth, and said, I'd love to hear your story. What helped you heal? Or, what are you still struggling to forgive? Let's talk. Leave a comment below, I read every one. And if this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs it too. She stood up gently, the candlelight flickering in the corner behind her. And hey, if you want more stories of faith, healing, and real-life redemption, don't forget to subscribe. We walk through the hard things here. But we never walk alone. A quiet beat. Then she whispered. Start your day thanking God. He's not done with you yet. And the screen faded to black. But not the story. Because now, it's your turn.